7, 24, 2012. Elaboration of cosmology. Here's a writing from last night that I wish to share now. I desire to work with a very curious idea that I have thought over earlier, where I write about a sort of history, in the Tolkien sense, that it is also mixed with serious poetry, documenting as much as I can, starting from God himself, with the nature of reality, the gods, their names and experiences, the presence of strange galaxies, stars, planets, and their times of creation and subsistence, even organic life, such that is very similar to our own life found on Earth, but here it will be rather different. Perhaps it will account for wholly unknown plant and animal life, as well as different eccentricities of men and women found on these planets. Perhaps there will be additional planets in the star system teeming with life. Of course, the most significant part of this history will be the documentation of the life of the men. I feel that I will borrow much relative experience from Atlantis, Sumer, and Egypt's Old Kingdom in order to describe more fully a unique race of abstract beings. Nevertheless, I will work on this task later. For now, this writing shown here, it could have been longer, but I merely burnt out and became tired halfway through it. This time, while explaining the atomic theory, the number of grades of the dimensions are refined from their past conception of 10 or 12 to merely the more Platonic 2, so that the real and ideal dimensions both have their place more understandably. There is, belonging to the doctrine of Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason, a God, one that is endless, perpetual, immortal, infinitely vast, detailed and intricate, of which he objectifies himself through the means of representation. He is the eternal expression, statement, word, reason. Through the act of obscure generation, he somehow divides himself into parts, for whatever unknowable reason, thus the conception of the knower, the subject, and that, before the known, the object. It occurs likely for perpetuity, but the duration of this division into parts is not knowable, so far as the knowledge is made available by the greatest or least means to man. Of time there is an eternity without limitation. Endless succession of the moment proceeds, the one condition forever bound and determined to hold the will of the knower in its place. There is neither a beginning of time as of the principle itself, neither forever an end, for a cause and its effect trace backward into time endlessly, without ever achieving prime arrival. With the will of God there is life, spirit, and activity. He does not perish, neither. The causation again traces back ever further, to no end. His history is forever active. As to the principle of space, there is a nucleus, a nexus of parts, fragments, more specifically of atoms, that of which, composed of an infinite number, again without limitation, a void is manifest in between these atoms. Thereby there is conceived and ordained the principle of motion. This of which is conceived, or at least upheld, by the will of the knower. There is a principle manifest in addition to both of these, that of which concerns causation. This principle, that of which credits the condition of experience, so that the activity of the moving parts of the atoms may be known and more importantly understood. Now, the atoms that compose of the threshold of matter, the threshold that is the basis and foundation for the wisdom of the knower, are partly fire, or hot and dry, water, cold and wet, air, hot and wet, earth, cold and dry. That is, one atom a part of the threshold may be fire, another water, or air, or earth, given their respective attributes. An atom, as observed from the perspective of the knower, within a smaller dimension of reflective thoughts, can, by extension of a parallel, be understood as the universe itself, as it is understood by the knower. The universe is similar to a sphere. It is an infinite and atomic particle. However, this infinitude accounts for reason of the universe's extension further out into the void, wherein the atoms become more sparse. The universe is, drawing the identical example with the atom, indivisible, at least insofar as one universe atom cannot be deprived totally of its substance, whatever this substance is, that it be essentially fire, water, air, earth, spirit, even. This last element deserves its consideration, albeit found elsewhere. As this example and description can easily be inferred from that the universe is akin to an atom found through the empirical method, that the void exists and thus gives room for the various display of atoms to collide and give sway, the ideal dimension, now referred here as an opposition to the real dimension, the one that is most commonly understood to be man's, makes up the composition of numerous amounts of real universe atoms found through the means of the knower. Now it is to be known that there indeed exists one universe. However, the knowing subject magnifies far and distantly enough only to happen across the limitation and edge of his universe, as seen through his eyes and understood through his will. However, beyond this very edge there is, as noted above, a void that encircles the shape and form of the universe. The perceptive extension beyond this void soon enough arrives the subject to what is commonly understood to be an alternate dimension, wherein this dimension in fact encompasses the reality of an additional wholly separate universe. Again, the example is applied from the mere observation into the nature of atomic theory, inverted and seen up close, similar to the greater observation into the nature of quantum theory, that is, of the universe seen up close, however to the point that the observation is one of distancing and peering, not one of close proximity and sensual clarity. The example referred above that both the nature of atoms found in the molecular, real, or commonly perceived natural state, and the nature of universes found in their fundamental spherical state from above can harmonize and mutually agree together with each other, for nature draws parallel with itself between one side of the spectrum and the other, with this case that of the atom and the universe, which essentially and fundamentally are one thing. And as there are more than one atoms within the threshold of approximate matter, so there must necessarily be more than one universe atoms within the threshold of proximate mediate matter. This theory can be clarified and expanded more simply through the means that knowledge that gives the knower the actuality of a vast multitude of atoms within his universe sphere. Therefore, as the two modes are identical, universe and atom, the knower must additionally correlate and supplant his knowledge with the actuality that there is a vast multitude of universe spheres as well. Insofar as there exists a countable and finite number of atoms within one universe, there thereby exists a countable and finite number of universes composing the image, the representation of the unified deity. But this is not so that the number is not finite, for God is eternal, everlasting, infinitely vast, infinitely detailed, and so forth, as stated above in the opening remark. Therefore, an infinite number of atoms manifest in one universe, collaterally speaking, then, an infinite number of universes manifest in one God. The atoms composing parts in the real phenomenal universe of the threshold of the knower do not, when magnified close enough, appear to contain anything more than whatever primordial element, fire, water, earth, spirit, air, earth, spirit, embodies and manifests in themselves at a given point in time. There is not a universe within the atoms found in the subject knower's field of nature. Contrary to what I earlier had imagined, the atoms examined up close here are merely embodying the reflection of the subject knower's will. It is not in fact possible to magnify close enough into one real dimension atom and come across a domain of nebulae, galaxies, stars, planets, organic life as such. The atom examined here is no more than a part and fragment that makes up the subject that of which is fallen or divided from the total life perspective into the parts conceived below the deity's feet. For whatever reason this occurs, this reason is not ipso facto knowable, however. The state and empire of God's domain consists of void and atom, subject and object. As above, so below. God subsists most potentially within the form of the void. Here he is known to be the Holy Spirit. However, his subsistence within the form of the atoms takes on the character of the four primordial elements. The fifth element, spirit, is comparable with the Holy Spirit just mentioned. It is interchangeable with the notion of the void, whereby fire, water, air, and earth are conceived as a part of the atomic, masculine, solid structure of the domain, wherein the term atom itself, whether it be solid, liquid, gaseous, or thick, none of these qualities are in reality feminine, but rather they are masculine, as every atom is solid and phallic to some or whatever degree, even water and earth. Only the void is feminine, as femininity is impossible to know or to understand in actuality, either in real terms or ideal, either concrete or abstract. There are ultimately two dimensions, one ideal, the other real, the first being the coalescing outcome of all or parts of the real dimension found from below. That is, the ideal dimension accounts for the parts or combinations of the universe atoms that are manifest in the smaller grade and degree of God's will. The ideal dimension is holy. It is an eternally subsisting, enormously vast circle in between all of the galaxies, nebulae, stars, planets, even organic life and such that revolve around its absolute, fixed, ineffable center. All of these nebulae, stars, galaxies, and such that are mentioned here are, in fact, a part of the ideal dimension. They are logical and universal outcomes of all the excessive little parts and fragments found subsisting below within the real dimension, that of which contains all of the universe atoms, of which are governed and legislated by the divided will of you and I. Earlier, it was understood that Gans emerged within the ideal dimension, as organic life, whatever it may be up there, is likely possible and just as much occurring as it is down here. Rather, I correct myself and reason to rename them gods, the great eternal beings, as every aspect of the two-part spectrum, that of the real and ideal dimensions, are interlaced with their controvertible ideas. July 24, 20-12. 7/26/20-12. Priest activity. Here are some miscellaneous art pieces that are compiled together this evening. They are symbolic, of course, with aspirations toward magic and the occult, classically reminiscent so far as the hues conceive, and of course indebted with much homage and imitation, albeit still trying toward originality. This most notably can be observed in the final painting toward the abstract ancient Egyptian efforts in hieroglyph and the empire's general spiritual creations. Enjoy and apprehend thoughtfully, as always. July 26, 20-12. 7/31/20-12. Totes Magic. Here is very magic-oriented writing from tonight. It is a very personal reflection of many aspects of my philosophy, but assembled together in a rather poetic way. I don't expect hardly anyone to understand this writing, although little fragments here and there might conceive in a more or less curious understanding for someone. I may write more in this style sometime soon. I think it is reasonable to return to a subjective spiritual method of writing every now and then, to depart from the rather objective and hard science writing of the more recent past. Keter's eternity, Staff's division, Nemesis's commandment, Moses toward deity, ancient of days, comprehensive of imagination, solar, reflection of darkness, formation of love, beyond necessity. Here the God is, fair, thought, robed, he is taught, eternity of logic, right method, marble, white, cold ground, Corinthian pillar, colossal Zeus, behold the house of Pericles. Stand the God beyond the Parthenon, toward the Acropolis, before vistas of Saturn, circles of charm, north and south, east and west, know thy spirit. Taught gazes, he becomes the Father, blood destruction, reiteration of the seat, alongside, exchange of Matthias, Keter's life within, creation's knowledge, time and space, Quantus's life, spirit of chaos, reason dictates course, air subsides below thy breast. It is he, time's ascension, sentence of Nut, dark speech. Read before thee, curse of Set, read before thee, blessed serpent, south toward Pomp, remembrance, northern wanderer, ferment this, libation, Trinity, 10th minute, spell of eastern air, 10th minute, spell of northern earth, fire and water, water and fire, 69 points, eternity of Keter. Cain and Abiel evoked, 9 reversed, the devil Capricorn looms above the lovers, the sword cuts across the lower third, Atlas's map, return of the forms, Plato's star invokes, stand before thee, eye of Horus, son of Hokmah, contemplate Evie's rhetoric, silence. Hell, beast of fire, justify thy reason, fall back, lurk in the shadows, water of Europa, Titan and Titan, autumnal watch, presence, arrival, seconds law, current foundation, Malkut, Keter, Malkut, Yesod, spirit sense, Mars, magic, Bina, libation, on top of head, pray, palms together, fortune reap, dispel, pray, palms together, fortune reap, 4 times, beast, unrest, unrest, beast, return thee, I beg thee, restore thy love, return thee, I beg thee, restore thy love, uphold the pentagram, evoke this 6 chimes, 6 times, up arrows, left Mars, water, water, 93 souls, turn soft, drink thy cup, Neptus's blood, back of head, beyond the flesh, eternity of logic, right method, cure thy curse, death's bones, spinner of web, deny thee into the shadows, eyes blink twice, hanged man, 40 manner, memories rise, Mars's dread, goat's sacrifice, eternity's crown, Atlas's uphold, 3 Ein, pure reason, evil genius, Titan's watch, the autumnal equinox, invoke scarlet justice, black death, Cupid, Thought draws, web of dread banishes, 93 remembers, beast of fire restores thy love, horse's eye awakens, catches life within, Tot serves eternity, father and son commune, cardinal directions assume, Acropolis, Acropolis, before the Acropolis, twice toward the Parthenon, Pericles' house stands, colossal Zeus, Corinthian pillar, white ground, marble, 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 twice recite the spell. Tot, 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 robed thought, fair, immortal, dark priestess's prayer before the house of God, ice water anoints Keter's eye, the head, staff, crown, pillar, eternal unity of Keter's staff, Keter, Hokma, Hokma, Keter, beyond the beyond, Ain, thrice, thrice, Ain. July 31, 28/12. Eight, 1, 20/12. Eva. Here is a brief writing from the other nights. I think that it is very sentimental. Much inspiration for it is drawn from the Meistersinger Quintet, wherein Eva is heard singing with Walter and some others in a very beautiful melody. I tried with this writing to set those sounds that I hear from the piece to poetic words, which is rather difficult. There is a deep psychology behind this musical piece of Wagner's, where the man consistently negates femininity, only wherein he is found afterwards sitting together with this aspect of nature, listening to her for once with mercy and understanding. I was rather tired when I wrote this article, therefore, like I said, it is rather brief. Perhaps I will elaborate on the idea a little more sometime soon to come. Hector lays alongside Helena, Walter, and Eva. Dusk gleams. At last he gives her mercy. In shadows of lunar love, ears attune, understands thy spirit. Home resolves. Solar rod cools. The moon's voice narrates. Twice tears leave her soul. The goddess sings a song of lullaby. He is transfixed with her, locked long in pure harmony. He shares her humility, a perpetual driven communion. Sulphur burns, yet dissolves. A lofty wedding of north and south, thine memory of past separation, now softly united in celebratory end. August 1, 20/12. 8/2, 20/12. Osiris's magic. Another magic writing, very much magic oriented. I like writing in this manner for quite some time already. I've written otherwise a rather non-spiritual, scientific perspective tone. To me, writing subjectively once again brings to me healing and redemption, a good sense of homage to the person that I once was, when I was once very potent, youthful and exploratory of unknown, open and potentially new ideas. I find it to be much easier to write in this method than orthodox philosophy, therefore there should certainly be more works of this nature soon to come. Utterances prior to Keter's recovery. Say, during the light masses night, the spells that surround him. God is God, 4 times, water glass. Michael guards the eyes, iris, needle and thread, ox tail, angelic chrysanthemum leaves, perennial flowers on the altar top, invocation of Set, cherubic corners absolved beyond brilliance, square of air, fire, water, earth, hawk's eye awaken thee, horse above earth, journey across the sky sea, Lohengrin's bark, restore thee in Hades, netherworld coffin, incarnate thee in altar procession, thrice recite, God of fire, souls, Lucifer's sword, impress thee upon the chaos temple, equilateral triangle, equilateral triangle, receive life's course. Marble incantation, intellect's hall, order clairvoyant lines, causality invoking, sea portal of infinity, pagan's frost, cross beyond the eye, Corazon sees Solomon surfing, extension of palms before truth, 10 flames, breath of smoke dictates the firstborn, Ptah, remembrance, Evie calls upon Adam, twice be told, God cries to final ideas, Plato is merciful, heart carries the absolution, sigil of chariot, white sphinx, black sphinx, 2 scourges drive Siegfried's hands, clad in black armor, Parsifal's aging spear hunt, David's star christens above his fate, sun beyond drive, Rod's presence in every point line, annihilation beckons spheres, waves, otherwise newt. Jupiter's ear draws mana, rotates the 20 spoken wheel, electric wizard spells thy circle, invoketh the cloud of Genie. He raises the sword of Michael, mortal vision. Crowley quests never to reappear. Northern winds, Dee hearkens to Enoch's vigil. Before thee, present thyself Arius' sacrifice. Drink the mystic blood, if only to attain to a minute's paradise. Soul returns to vain misfortune, the perpetual egg of Libestode. Astral magic runs dry, in strife Egypt trembles. Giza sees Horus burning. Pyramid tops eject, only to reveal below sands of eternal wilderness. Citadels collapse. Osiris gather violet amulets, silver staff, golden throne, white crown. Place these precisely within the white circle of protection. Enchant, consecrate, Minerva oil upon instruments. Recitation, prayer of Kabbalistic deity. Altar pulsate, pulsate. Osiris proceed to the throne. Hall becomes pantheon, God's mass circle of invoking. Osiris sits perfectly, steady on the throne. Gather violet amulets, hang onto breast. Silver staff, clutch in right hand, point north. White crown, settle onto head, pentagram forward, 3 hexagrams behind. Robe violet, legs armored, in left hand hold the globe, in golden hue. It disappears soon afterward, placed upon the center of the altar. Pillars of ivory raised from the floor. Silver staff raised, recitation, utterance. Abba Kadabra, Ehe Yehe Yata Ya, Mono So Yaga, Da Ba Ga. Silver staff lowered, mouth closed. 4 minutes communion with the infinite edges of the holy circle. Stand from the seat, point staff directly south from front of the throne. Call upon Yod, appear angry, stubborn, desirous. Make the 2-point wand vigil with staff. Pull an instrument, face it vertical, point with left hand index finger to lips in order to silence the action to contemplation thus committed. Face west, point staff directly west. Call upon He, appear kind, loving, acceptant, nurturing. Make the V vigil with staff. Pull an instrument, face it vertical, point with left hand index finger to lips in order to silence the action to contemplation thus committed. Face east, point staff directly east. Call upon Wow, appear playful, cheerful, mischievous, troublesome. Make the equilateral triangle with staff. Pull an instrument, face vertical, point with left hand index finger to lips in order to silence the action to contemplation thus committed. Face north, point staff directly north. Call upon He, appear indifferent, objective, heavy, immense. Make the perfect square with staff. Pull an instrument, face it vertical, point with left hand index finger to lips in order to silence the action to contemplation thus committed. Return to center, make the pentagram vigil with staff. Starting from north, downward to southwest. Upward to northeast, across to northwest, downward to southeast, upward to north. Repeat recitation, utterance. Abba Kadabra, Ehe Yehe Yata Ya, Mono So Yaga, Da Ba Ga. Pull an instrument, face it vertical, now outstretch arms in form of the cross, uttering slowly, once, I. Raise arms above head, bring hands together with staff, uttering slowly once, loudly, Ah. Bring in arms quickly, hands above, upon center of chest, uttering once slowly, heavily, Oh. With left hand, first 2 fingers, dab with water from altar's chalice, dab forehead, once, lips, both cheeks, center of chest, reciting, God granteth thee thy mercy, thus to perform and to preserve once more thy sanctuary, thus to redeem and master forever thy spirit. Now sit thyself upon the throne, with silver staff lowered to floor in right hand, facing vertical, with golden globe now in left, hand extended, upright and horizontal, mouth closed. 4 minutes communion with the infinite edges of the holy circle. Utterance posterior to Keter's recovery. Say during the light masses night, the spells that surround him, God is God. 4 times, water, glass. Michael guards the eyes of Aris, needle, thread, ox tail, angelic chrysanthemum leaves, perennial flowers on altar top, invocation of Set. Cherub corners absolve beyond brilliance, square of air, fire, water, earth. Hawk's eye awaken thee, horse above earth. Journey across the sky, sea, Lohengrin's bark. Restore thee in Hades, netherworld coffin. Incarnate thee in altar procession, thrice recite. Ride thee thy fire tiger toward eternity, toward eternal certainty. Know thee thy human tears toward infinite illumination, thus to cross upon thee the hawk's eye of cornerstone's abyss, to deliver thyself piecemeal toward the Dharma ball with 4 healthy legs. Brightness, brilliance, shine before thee, O great mastery, that beyond thy luminescence may the infinite void encapsulate our work, if only to restore our own suffering, seemingly everlastingly, yet only for the moment. Thy spheres, waves of Shiva, attend to open themselves perpetually. Brahma, complete thyself 100 times, whether a part of the threshold persists in various numbers. The submission of thyself to autumnal legs, the Kali Yuga proceeds gradually to its final entropy, if only to apprehend potential rebirth. Recycle and rest. Sound, sound, sound. Silence. August 2, 2012. 8/3/2012. Unis. Here is a severely magic-oriented writing that it somehow did tonight, after finally returning to the book that has been calling in the back of my mind for several years now, the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts. I read a good portion from it earlier tonight, learning from its very ancient and primitive ways, studying and even comprehending, as it can somewhat be seen in this writing presented here, much of the first little chapter, so that I went ahead and wrote somewhat of an honorary testament to what I have been reading and subconsciously thinking about for years now. The result, I think, is very strange, because I find it hard to believe that I actually wrote this. But I've always considered myself ancient and fatherly nevertheless, so the writing does appear not to be so divinely inspired, but simply done by me more or less. Anyway, again, this writing will probably not be understood by many people, but once more here and there a few passages may spark a little inspiration. If not, then a general knowledge may be achieved merely by aesthetically understanding parts of it. Unis, king, state officiate, sovereign of that kingdom of the hall, the dual Ennead, deceased, embalmed, mummified, spelled, blessed, praised. Thou art entombed in thy stone sarcophagus, dwelling upon night's hour, deep within the duat. The sun sets as the eye of Atum shuts, to the west of the marsh of offering, to the west of the reed field. Unis. Thine sun settles, thou meetest with the tomb-dwelling of Osiris. Shu watcheth fulfilled. Tefnut coateth Rez sands with dew. The Nilla gathereth together her mixture. Geb meeteth with the feet of Set. Nut drifteth beyond her womb. She dimly illuminateth the sky by Horus Falcon's silver right eye. Re resteth within Osiris's brick tomb, deep, eternally within the duat. His everlasting Ka invigorateth the fearful wanderer. Rez a houseboat supplieth meat and drink. Rez, truth be told, doth rebirth thy vigilance. Osiris, together with thy Ka in thine breast, merge together with his venturesome eternity. The 5th hour of night chimes. Thou, Unis, prepare thyself for the glorious rise to the everlasting sky. Nu refresheth herself. Nut descendeth from her luminous watch-tower. Deep within the duat, quoth wretches that feast upon not unto Unis, never the more upon thy onerous deserving king. Unis resteth within his gentle dwelling, he showeth a smile upon his lips. Scavengers, pests, be not thine enemy, fall down upon the scent of his proximity, he who smelleth more divine than his father Geb. Unis, thou art not crawled upon, neither entreated nor suckled upon by the vermin of Ka without Ba. Conks pox, cobs pecked. Salt dasheth upon the great King Unis. Salt dasheth upon the floor of the great King Unis's burial chamber, across Unis's Ba preserved sarcophagus. Beware pests, beware thy curse that scattereth upon thee the moment thou even summoneth thyself into the great King Unis's pyramid dwelling. Centipede and serpent, worm and snake, feast not upon thine most feared and respected king. Crawl not neither within nor upon this house of God. Begone at last with thou verminous pestilence. Eat of thy flesh elsewhere, of not one so undeserved of thine unholiest punishment. Unis commendeth thy spell work, if thee doth not abominate sacrilege, this penitent ground upon which thy most worshipful God lays his Ba at rest. deep within the Duat, Rhea intertwines together with Osiris's Ka. Now the Akhet is mourning. A horse's eye swalloweth at once unto the navel of Osiris. He spits the eye out with fresh and milky energy. His life force is enamoured. His Ka is inspired, driven to cross upon the final steps of the tomb's corridor within the Duat of the dead, the netherworld of night, in which Osiris and Horus doth converge. Oh, rise, King Unas, from this resting mound of which thou turnest the stone while asleep. However, beware of thy rebirth. Thou art fresh and naked, uncloaked, unguarded. A passage of monstrous incantations hath perturbed over thee while thou wert asleep. Upon this western wall I carve unto thee thy spell work, of which those curses that entreateth thee during the night's rain shall fall upon their backs and crawl away with shame and remorse. Here, Unas, I taketh thee this honor to prepare for thee thine resurrection with helpful offering in insignia. Osiris, merge thy Ka with Unus's Ba. See that thou watch over thine brethren. Thou, with the careful eye, with the green pigment, thou shalt care for this king, while I help him to prepare for his daily journey unto new. Reciteth 5 times. I am asleep, I am stirred, I am awakened. Osiris breatheth thee into thine breast. Come before thee into thine onerous form. Osiris Unas I, Osiris Unas Ah, Osiris Unas O. Osiris Unis, thou art king, deceased, although alive, thou awaketh from thy rest within this stone sarcophagus. The gods remember thee, thou art immortal, everlasting, thou hast been rewarded the blessing to eternally commune with Re within the day-boat in his abode among Nu's waters. I encourage thee, Osiris guideth thy spell work before thee, reciteth these utterances, for thou art twice striven toward eternal celebration and sovereign communion. Abba Gadaba Ehe yata ya, mo no, so yo ga, da ba ga. Reciteth utterance 5 times. Osiris Unas, here's thy Ka's arm. Here's the Ka's arm. Osiris Unas, here's thy Ka's foot. Here's thy Ka's foot. Fasten these arms and feet and pulleth them together with thy Ka's trunk. Tot entereth thy resting room from the booths of the broad hall. He chanteth his blessing unto thee. He lowereth his staff before thine plexus. To the north wall he faceth with his right hand extended. Utterance. Iya shakwa, iya shikwa, iya kingu, iya kutu, iya za war. Tot entreateth his magic. Osiris breatheth thee into thine breast of King Unas. Breathe thee into thy breast. Horus is betwixt Osiris betwixt Unas. Horus, see Osiris Unas asleep. Osiris Unas stirs. He prays with the eye of Horus, in order to satisfy thee thine immortal privilege. He asketh kindly and gently. He is awake. He breathes with his Ka and Ba, certain to thee. He imploreth to fulfill his privilege with divine illumination. Horus prayeth Unith. Osiris is merciful unto him. Horus affirmeth his right to bestow Osiris Unas with his reward. Horus, grasp thee thine copper rod. See to it that Unus's mouth shall be opened with this rod of copper. Horus opens with the copper rod Osiris Unus's once fixed mouth. Horus, grasp thee in thy right hand thine glorious right eye from thine forehead. Osiris twice banishes Set from the chamber, which Set casteth the rod upon himself, mortified and petrified. Horus, insert into Osiris Unus's mouth that glorious bright eye. 3 times reciteth Osiris Unas, thy mouth seeth to most radiant glow. Do not cast this eye of Horus out. Fear not, Unas. This Ka of which enamoreth thee is wholly divine and necessary, as thou art worshipped of thine brethren as a god amongst them. Lord of the Ombos, watch this cobra of Nephthys as it dances before thine feet. It circleth thyself and swalloweth its vertebrae in plain sight with thine accompaniment. The Akhet stirs, Osiris Unas. Arise before thee that officiates. Eyes forward directeth thee to thine southern marsh of offering. Be pleased with thyself of the adornments and cleansed incantations that awaiteth before thee. Unas, stand south, welcome thyself as arisen. The Akhet stirs, thy brethren desireth thee. Horus, make way for thine king. Prepare before himself this offering table. This offering table is the altar of King Unas. He eats his bread and eats his meat here. He enjoys his everlasting wine and foam. Horus, prepare this offering table for King Unas. Horus, cleanse this table with divine libation. Light the fire of incense within the center of the table. Horus, Unus's mouth desireth cleansing. See to it that Unas standeth before thee, that with thine jar of salt water Unus's mouth shall be cleansed. Horus cleanses Unus's mouth with 4 handfuls of salt water. 2 pellets of nitrogen are added thus to the cool water that Horus cleanseth Unus's mouth with. Udis's mouth is parted. Udis's mouth opens. See, Udis, Horus offers unto you a fresh loaf of bread, 5 onion heads, 1 white quartzite jar of wine, 1 black quartzite bowl of beer. Devoureth this matter with pleasure, Udis. See that these onions are to be Udis's teeth, that this bread becomes his contentment, that the foam gushes forth from jar to jar. Horus sweeps the offering table. Horus anoints Udis's eye with a first-class oil of cedar, Libyan. He presents thou with a bag of green eye paint, a bag of black eye paint, that thou shalt paint a horse's eye soundly upon thy face. Udis, thou art presented with Osiris's linen, 2 strips. Shalt thou awaken in peace. Osiris shalt sit opposite unto thee when thou art admonished and freed enough from thy pyramid dwelling. Horus douses Udis's forehead with 1 libation. He cleanses again Udis's mouth. Horus prepareth thine offering table. Tot, get him with the offering table. Udis accepts Horus's eye. He is Ka, Ba, and Ak. Ak is his eye is his Ak. The offering table is presented, twice reciteth, cometh with the king's offering, cometh with the king's offering. Sit down, Udis, be quiet. I invoketh thee, I washeth thy mouth once again. 3 loaves of bread art offered unto thee, 3 jugs of beer and ale. Udis, lift thy loaves unto thy face, lift thy foam unto thy mouth. Wash thyself and prepare thy re-entry of Horus's eye into thy mouth. Provide thyself with the foam that cometh before thee. 3 times reciteth, 3 times reciteth, 3 times reciteth. Udis accepteth from thee 1 bowl of meat shank, 2 bowls of water, with 2 pellets of cleansing natron. Wash thy mouth, Udis, accepteth from thee 1 loaf of bread, 1 jug of beer. Thou art given bread and onions, beef and poultry, bread cut and warm, beer and cream, wine and fruits, barley and vegetables. I dedicate this offering unto thou, O Udis. Shalt what we have elastically endureth unto thou. O Udis, stand up, thou art replete with 1,000 bread, 1,000 beer, meat, bread pulled from the broad hall. The gods provideth their offering. Udis is provided with his bread. Osiris cometh unto his bow. Udis is united among the ox. Udis, elevate thyself. Remember thy everlasting offering. Pleasant and splendid, thou dost not strayeth too far until thee share in this praise and fortune of everlasting feast, celebration, offering. Remembereth thou, we art here, we art not long apart. I give unto thee Horus's eye, may it endureth with thee eternally. O Udis, thou art departing from the burial chamber. Prepare thyself to govern the mounds of Horus, of Set and Osiris. A sovereign offering of all thy insignia is bestowed and honored before thee with all its features. A water lily scepter, a staff and violet diadem. The beetle of time is mourning. He shouts to thine name and honor, blessing and awaiting. Thine offerings art reversed. Thine bread and wine is remembered. By thee libation, incense. Go thee together with thy Ka. Horus goes together with his Ka. Set goes together with his Ka. Tot goes together with his Ka. Osiris goes together with his Ka. Eyes forward goes together with his Ka. Udis goes together with his Ka. Udis, thy Ka's arm is here before thee. Thy Ka's foot is here before thee. Osiris, Udis breathes with the Horus's eye. He seeth every god awaiting his arrival across the great and final steps of the divine corridor. He is purity, he smelleth divine. Horus's eye, gleam Udis 1,000 gleams, that he shall become brought higher and bigger toward the Akhat. Udis, smash thee thine offering vessels, smash thee thine stone table, destroy these bowls and jars, for that Horus shall become afraid of thee. Udis with his little finger digs from Osiris's navel. Imagine in Heliopolis. He doth not hunger, he doth not thirst. The cupbearer of the sun, Re, provideth with all that Udis needs to meet. He prepareth his way toward the antechamber. He is never thirsty, he is never hungry. Re's cupbearer provideth Udis with 4 handfuls of salt water. That this is all Udis shall need before his daily adventure. Shu is afresh, Udis is afresh. The twain gods art given their final bread of divine worship. That this is all Udis shall need before his daily adventure. Udis awaketh, Udis awakeneth. Thought goes upon higher. The sleeper arouses. The toothless calf is revered. Udis's mouth is cleansed. Udis's mouth is cleansed with the bubbly natron that is provided from the howl of the dual Ennead. Udis does not abominate. Udis does not urinate. The sun, Re, and Tot prepare for Udis's arrival. They see that he is one of their divinity. They see that his booth of reeds shall stand tall and fixed. The marsh of offering is flooded before Udis's worshippers. The water of worlds become like wine of Udis, of the sun. Udis circumnavigates the sky with Re. Unus courses the sky with thought. Unus doth not eat, he doth not drink. These are his abominations. The milk goddess attendeth his desire. She has born of Unus. Unus is born in the night. Unus is conceived in the night. Unus was conceived in Nu. Unus was born in Nu. He belongeth to the sun's wake. He is awaketh before the morning god. Reciteth a horse's eye, droopeth on the Dimmu bush. Foremost of westerners came before it, having fetched sustenance for horse, foremost of the houses. Unus eats as horse eats, horse drinks as Unus drinks, Unus lives as horse lives. He offereth unto the house of the gods of the north and south the marsh of reeds, the marsh of offering, one joint of roast meat. August 3, 2012. Eight 12, 2012. Letters 10. Here is rather lengthy compilation of letters written between I and my good friends done this evening, finally having gathered together the remainings of a few months of friendly correspondence, edited to appear singular, of course. Letters 9, June 7, 2012. I'm perfectly accepting the thought that one may not currently be philosophically inclined or learned. The process to the true acquisition of even a meagre knowledge entails years of study and leisure. Fortunately, in my case, that of which I have, that is, leisure, but it is enough to truly transform my policy and theory of things into a radical manner for the best that I believe it is. I'm always glad to hear from persons that my thoughts on philosophy and such are enjoyable to learn from, if not then to merely listen to. The Latin term presenti I use may very well be a coinage of mine. I state it as such in the video Thoughts on a Personal Writing. The word seems to express in a legitimate means my intention of the present moment of an historical or contemporary point in time. I am not too well learned of Latin, this reality being an object of disdain for me. I always desire to eventually learn from it this fluently, as well as Greek, though it is surprisingly not so difficult to pick up specific words, to tie them together with the structure of the sentence, that there is apparently much similarity and obvious parentage and ancestry of that language. Our Teutonic and especially Romantic family of languages descends prominently from it. I was nervous at first beginning in the video, indeed, but some time follows, and I then forget my audience in the critical sense. Then I speak more at ease. I wish to do another one of these videos very soon, actually. I've been spending the past several hours, in fact, watching Yale lecture courses of history and philosophy professors online, overcoming my youthful experiences with public speaking. I like the grand introduction of my video. I use it for aesthetic purposes, yes, but the music that is heard in it liberates my soul so exceedingly that I frequently move to tears when I occasionally listen to the section Wacht auf. The musical fragment, of course, possesses more complete length that can be found in all sorts of recordings of the opera, that is, the opera by Richard Wagner, Die Meistersinger von Nuremberg, a very comical opera, surprisingly, yet of course characteristically tragic in most sections, sounds that are typical of the most capable and honest musician that I believe the world has ever conceived, that is, so far in history, that with his spiritual rebirth in whatever amount of centuries, may we perhaps again witness creations of art in its grand and moving nature, if the sociable and political circumstances of his time allow of it, or that they give his soul enough sense of cultivation to his upbringing and maturity. May 29, 2012. Yes, as far as ankylosis, epiglottis is concerned, I'm sure that there are dozens, if not hundreds of examples similar in the conception that we could find, between, be it the French language and Latin, or the English and Greek, and so on. There is, of course, seen over the great many centuries of time such an interwoven connection between all the European languages that has come to be known today, many thanks owing to the trade, commerce, and such during the greatly expansive Roman Empire years, especially when it was flourishing during approximately the first and second centuries after Determinus, as also especially during the Renaissance and also and early modern period, when great works of antiquity were being discovered, freshly translated and circulated, as well as the continent's connectivity within itself, communicating and such, ever gradually incorporating new terms into each language owing thanks to each other's existence, the acquiring of knowledge and shaping the state of the various countries, the thought patterns for the better. I have yet another video finished and uploaded online just now, by the way, the same conception as the first video from earlier, Thoughts on Fundamental Philosophy. I think it is somewhat of a continuation of the first film. Perhaps I will complete it with a third film. The third one focusing perhaps more on political philosophy via Hobbes and Machiavelli, for what I know of them at least. I have still so much to learn from these great men, among so many others. May 29, 2012. The title of this writing speaks for itself, a brief critique of a lovely friend. The critique itself considers the subject matter of black metal, the aesthetic value of a grammatic revival, National Socialism, and its commonly mistaken hostility to Judaism, wherein Christianity and European folk are often overlooked as possible criminals of the West, that the National Socialist typically does not embrace his own subjective responsibility, which is everywhere evident by merely looking at a singular postmodern political rally. June 7, 2012. I adore my good friend's temperance with me so very much. I know now, after a certain critical message to her, that she is trustworthy and loyal, regardless if I send her some thoughts that counter-respond to her convictions. I love that she acknowledges my wisdom even further when my ideas go on a course that is different from her own. I bow to her words and appreciate them likewise. We, of course, remain just as great a couple of friends as before my earlier message. We continue to relate similarities and interests that belong to our own selves manifold. Especially among these is our appreciation and idealization of Greca and Roma, but it by no means comes close to exhausting our list of numerous interests that we really can share. It is good that we meet and merge, not even from time to time, but more regularly and frequently than we can imagine. If we contemplate this thought, we understand the majority of the time that our minds and values that are set on pretty much the same virtuous course. She is one of the worthiest and most enlightened women that I have ever met. We should accentuate this fact to further cement our evaluation of each other. Europa is a corpse indeed. I am glad that she sees this reality in fact, that no effort in such on the part of men, however tremendous, can truly save it. Can she imagine our ideas breaking through into popular mainstream currents of thought? We would eventually need to resort to sabotage and terrorism, as the media would instantaneously destroy our message if it ever were becoming more popular enough to reach beyond the murky depths of the underground politics. Even sabotage and terrorism would fail, as simply the Western civil states are so militaristically powerful. June 8, 2012. Here's a rather spiritual writing done tonight, triumph and defeat, but it is a fusion of other things too, namely prose that verges on political philosophy, as well as religious discernment and personal vision. It is somewhat lengthy, though I think it is nonetheless interesting, something whatever it is, to read and think over. June 10, 2012. I feel similarly at times, when experiencing images and thoughts of those inferiors that strive to destroy all that is ideal, optimal, close to perfect, and good enough. My blood boils at so many of them. The numbers are suffocating. Our intellectual dimensions are polluted by sickness, delusion, and liberal deceivers. There is indeed a sense of futility in comprehending these things, that they are gone for good. It is truly impossible to effect anything in their minds once again, for living in their state is simply too easy and too lovely that they settle down within their tents, a sense of laziness and personal surrender. Master moralists continue to roam the fields and establish only temporary quarters, in order to continuously discipline their naturally ascetic and worthy impulses. As it goes for Aram Khachaturian, I remember his Saber dance rather well. I had played this piece on the piano somewhat regularly when I had access to the music, but other than that I don't possess much knowledge of his music, and from what I hear it sort of fails to interest me. Most of it sounds rather shallow, that there are not enough transcendental motives permeating his sounds, unlike with the other composers that are mentioned, Bach, Chopin, Wagner, Beethoven, and such too, wherein these reflective, moralizing motives are thoroughly to be found within their works. June 10, 2012. I remember that Quorthon, who was Kvasir, did not do stage shows during his musical career, for supervisors and club managers and such thought that his act would be too dangerous to witness. He desired to fire, breathe, and such. He was an exceptional man, very intelligent and highly creative. In his own isolated country he seems to have developed extensively the music of black metal with his first record in 1984, although other bands were doing the same during that time. But I believe Quorthon, who was a Kvasir, had little to no knowledge of their outside advancements. The same goes for Viking metal, which one wrote to Asabe, is a very good example of this genre and style. He practically created its sound all on his own, and is very much admired by many later fans of his music. June 10, 2012. I'm certain that I would like Khachaturian eventually, if I were to give him enough time listening to his music. Like the other early 20th century Russian composers, Scriabin is one that I've especially been desiring to get interested in. He likely possesses a wealth of good music that of which I just haven't heard of yet, but if and when I do, it is probably likable for me. The Sabra dance being one hint and example, I think. On the mention of Spartacus, I think that I have heard of this word in cinema, that it is an earlier epic film similar to Lawrence of Arabia and Ben-Hur and so on. If it is so, the idea of it seems Roman. I think that I will just have to watch this. I can picture the title in my mind appearing across the screen in marble plating with gold lettering and perfect fifth chords, Roman-sounding trumpets bellowing from the audio. I remember that there is this one gigantic scene in the fall of the Roman Empire, wherein the Roman Forum is reconstructed by master architects, almost 1-to-1 ratio, and there is this huge procession of the senators, military, citizens, and such across the streets. It was so expensive a film, but then it fell short upon its release and reception, turning out very little popularity, unfortunately. This is another film that I've been intending to see. I haven't watched it yet, but Spartacus may be another one on my wish list to see. Sometimes I feel that I see myself never truly surrendering my Faustian, Dante-esque, idealist expressions for a real, practical, or nihilistic form. I think much of the darkness that I embody is ultimately rather juvenile, as it strongly denies utilitarian intentions, such as industrial employment or commercial vocation, in place of things rather imaginative and fantastic, steep castles perched high on a mountain, with thunder and lightning and so on. This is how I feel that my will is at times rather youthful. Black metal interests too abound, contributing to this theory, but many other aspects of my character are very old-fashioned, archaic, and time-tested. This can evidently be seen by the mannerisms and fundamental ideology and such. June 11, 2012. As it goes for the Spartacus film, I may like to still check into it, yet I'll bring with me my friend's observations and think somewhat differently about it than what I previously did prior to our opinion of it being shared with me. Scriabin seems to have developed radically new tonality and notation technicality during his time. Everywhere that I see him mentioned, he is referred to with much respect and as a sort of grandfather of modern composition in a very unique style. I have come across the sheet music to what I believe were some of his piano preludes several years ago, and they appeared to be very difficult as the notation was extremely modern and discarding of common practice period techniques. But I liked it though, and I'm sure that my friend can recommend to me a few good pieces of his. June 11, 2012. The little story about Nureyev defecting to the West was interesting, dancing in public to Scriabin upon a red silk cloak, something emblematic of hateful sentiment toward the Soviet Union, I believe. June 12, 2012. I think that regardless of whether the notes be rather minimal and sparing in the piece, the latest recording seems to be truly successful in its spirit and thoughts. The use of Napoleon as a painting showcase is ethically okay as I consider it, whether he be a symbol of proletarian rescue, resurrection, and triumph, thoroughly not in the spirit of our ideals. But I tend to choose objects of art through a rather complicated means. It was during this time that Napoleon happened to result in the conclusion of my efforts, still with a sense of understanding and quasi-affectionate knowledge of him. I absolutely love Holst's The Planet Suite. Mars unfailingly gives my body chills when I listen to it, with such a Romanesque, Nietzschean, Homeric heroism. Neptune is so distant, faded and mysterious, old and very wise, but lonesome, quiet, and solitary. Uranus is one of my favorites, for it seems to uphold the wisdom and Sephiroth on the Kabbalah loyally and with legitimacy, almost to affection. Yet it is that Sephiroth itself that is so difficult and complicated to elaborate upon and describe, especially through musical means, in detail and with authenticity. He manages to do this very well. Along with Jupiter, I think this piece represents the suite as a noble anthem. The others are wonderful too. I think it is amazing how well the composer writes away his music so faithfully to each of the enumerations of the Kabbalah. Judging this from seasoned knowledge in the rational system, myself, I believe it may be safe to say that Holst contained knowledge of the contents of it as well. Otherwise, the music wouldn't have been so truly correct, and I like it to it in its expression. June 13, 2012. I love Die Valkyrie, of course. I should actually have started listening to it from beginning to end by now, since I have completed listening to Das Rheingold on here a few weeks ago, but I merely needed to schedule myself the right time to do this. I like my friend's father's idea to incorporate classical music into her experience during infancy and early childhood, as well as his reading the newspaper with her at this age. Holst is a great selection as always to choose from, as well as Rachmaninoff. I once was obsessed with this latter composer, especially attempting year after year to play efficiently enough his third piano concerto, one that I heard from a movie that I watched in my early youth, that this composition was one of the hardest ever composed for the piano, at least in the rather late romantic style. I just had to aspire toward the perfection of its performance. I did rather well. However, I'm sure that if I were to play it today, that I would be 1,000 times better at it than how I was so long ago, due to my aging, maturity, patience, radical improvement of my understanding and such. The Kabbalah luckily has its similarities with the Bhagavad Gita. This book I've been desiring very much to purchase and read. I haven't gotten involved intimately enough with Eastern literature in material book form that is. I do possess a quite decent amount of knowledge of Hinduism and Buddhism from other extraneous sources, which is a goal of mine to complete one of these days. I would love to read some Lovecraft again. I think that I should buy a book of his at last and acquaint myself with his weird literary thoughts and morbid ideas. June 13, 2012. Another writing done during the night, The Annihilation of Consciousness. It is rather complicated prose, very much philosophical. Lately I have at last returned to reading Schopenhauer again. I was inspired by a few passages of his writing, thus decided to take some peculiar ideas that I discovered and advanced as part of his knowledge, formed them altogether in a unique way, faithful to my philosophy, and wrote them down with some elaboration. Particularly, Schopenhauer's principle of sufficient reason is frequently referenced, as it is the total aspect of consciousness, its forms of time, space, causality that are desired by my will to be reduced by and large, to the end that consciousness inevitably attains bliss, moksha, or most understandably peace, nirvana, as it is something inevitably desired by the subjects. He thus eventually achieves the annihilation of consciousness. June 14, 2012. I love the Neptuna music that is playing on my friend's page right now. The music is extraordinary. The planet itself, along with the video detailing aspects of it as close as the satellite image can show, I've always held fascination for this particular planet. It is the furthest of the true planets of the solar system, the most mysterious and also the coldest and bleakest, hence my frequent adoration of it. I think that Neptune is my favourite, probably because it seems the wisest, for being so far removed and detached from worldly or material concerns. But planets much closer to the sun still convey dominance toward my ideals, like Mars and Saturn, each for their unique reasons. Mars being so Romanesque and masculine, authoritarian, Saturn for being the grand aspect of time, which represents the kind of age and maturity that my character has for so long been established within. June 14, 2012. It is an interesting idea that Lovecraft and Holston's Planets suite are supposedly to complement each other. The more that I hear about his literature, the more that I want to read him. De Valkyrie is so beautiful in opera, of course, as I see my friend is very aware of this. I remember reading somewhere that it was said Wagner was disturbed by how beautiful the sounds were turning out to be during his composition of it. In the end of the opera, I'm usually found in tears during Brunhilde's farewell from Wotan, her renunciation of godly powers into the ring of eternal fire. I watched a few videos online of this very sad scene. There was one in particular that I enjoyed very much, but I don't recall where to find it anymore. It was a rather modern production, with a typical misunderstanding of Wagner's artistic intentions, business suits, and such, but the singers were outstanding, and Wotan was very otherworldly and fatherly, in a vast and cold sense. I like her little story that she mentions to me, by the way, of watching the Bayreuth Centenary production on British television when she first got married to her husband. She must have been fanatically desirous of Peter Hoffmann in the ideal Wagnerian hero itself at this point in time, as it seems she was young and very impressionable. I would love to purchase a full set of recordings of the ring, so that I could listen to them while in my car or lounging around. Having the libretto with me would help tremendously. I typically like to read along with the singers, transposing the German into the English equivalent right alongside on the page. Doing this helps my German accent considerably, as well as learning a few words or so likewise. I would love to record some Rachmaninoff eventually. At the moment I am devoid of any of his sheet music, unfortunately, but I may eventually buy another book of his. I've been meaning to restock my library of sheet music. For many years now it has been depleted from moving from place to place, throwing books out. Once I had dozens and dozens of books. Now I have only a few, which is pitiful, as I desire to play more and upkeep my practice and polish my ability to read with swiftness and accuracy musical notes. June 14, 2012. I watched the film Wotan's Farewell to Brunhilde, although a rather modern production, but nonetheless absolutely effective. A few months ago it had torn me to shreds. It is divine and I wish to listen to the whole opera of Die Valkyrie if I can ever get myself inspired well enough to do so, or merely to find the right time and atmosphere to truly listen to it. Wagner's power is certainly fatal, spiritually redeeming and cathartic. June 14, 2012. The production isn't too modern, as she says now, upon giving the performance a second attempt, but I'm astonished at the thought that there is a production with the singers in space suits. Personally, I think it is rather blasphemous to transform the very noble and refined intentions of Wagner's works, which his were something hardly approving of modern taste and aesthetic, hence the perpetual homage to earlier European historical eras and such. I took a look at the Isle of the Dead painting by Arnold Röchlin just now. I love the very shining and bright navigator, full of noble and heroic intentions. It's so very minuscule and dwarfed by the awesome giantness of the dark and gloomy island before him. I wonder if the artist has any other sentiments or wishes to express in this painting that I don't know of or can visualize for the moment. June 14, 2012. Rachmaninoff's music Isle of the Dead is a piece that was recommended to me to listen to by someone many years ago when I was especially interested in his music. Discussing the composer's music with this person, hence the potential suggestion. I've listened to it and remember the beginning of it sounds so very grave, morbid, and nocturnal. I know that many of the archaic stage props used in Bayreuth's Wagnerian operas are now left to themselves and collecting dust. At least this is what I've read. This includes the Brunhilde rock that is spoken of. Everything perishes, including the greatest monuments and devotions to grandeur, the gods and stage props and so on as well. It is good to see at least some opera organizers still it's good at least to see some opera organizers still preserve the old tradition to some extent, even though a few modern adaptations to the performances may slightly be observed, but nothing too detrimental to the audience's senses. June 15, 2012. Once again, I'm left alone in a state of sublime tears while listening to this piece to Meistersinger's quintet. I ultimately cry for a sense of love for someone, an ideal spirit, of a special companion whose essence may intertwine with my own person over time, that of which represents the epitome of what I can even ask for in this personal, solitary, and ever-dying world. Nothing is eternal but the soul, but let thy love last as much as the two can mortally preserve it. So much sentimental inspiration can be gathered from this piece, I think. June 15, 2012. I may want to purchase a book that contains a set of collections of Lovecraft's work someday. To own a recording of the Ring cycle is one of my lifelong desires. There was a salty recording of all 4 of the operas at the local library in the town where I lived with my Kopecky father. It was there where I would check each opera out individually and over time, listen to one in completion, then move on to the next. I completed the entire drama once doing it this way. However, my town that I currently live in is devoid of any Ring material. I thought that Jon Vickers was outstanding in Tristan und Isolde, alongside with Helga Dernisch. The conductor to this recording was Karajan. His voice sounded very distinct in one of his own, but perhaps it sounds different in other recordings. Some of which my friend must have come into contact with and listened to, but I can't be certain of this right now, of course. A 16-year waiting list for the Bayreuth Festival. My God, to go to one of these would be such a marvelous occasion to experience. I would love to visit Germany one of these days, especially Bayreuth, but also possibly Munich, Weimar, and Leipzig, maybe even Berlin. June 15, 2012. I love scarves and would wear one of mine outside if only right now the temperature wasn't so warm as it is in the middle of the season of spring. I will look into Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu and other weird stories online, with S.T. Yoshi as the introducer. Just this morning I tried to find online a full-length film recording of all the operas in production of The Ring. After a brief search I came across one. I began watching it past the prelude, then was disappointed immediately as the subtitles were in a foreign language, Italian, and that, of course, was not what I was looking for. I intended to find a complete film recording of The Ring with English subtitles. This would be the easiest or most utilitarian means for me to enjoy the works. As the last time I began listening to The Ring, I'd merely listened to the music itself on a set of audio films online, only up to and finishing Das Rheingold, coupled with artwork for the visuals, with no text or acting to more fully illustrate the nature of Wagner's intentions. So right now, it seems, given the financial hardship that it would be for me to purchase a whole recording of the Ring, I may merely continue listening to the operas on here, while loading onto the screen from some other website the German and English text alongside themselves and read along with it to get the better understanding of what is going on in the works, and thus to bring out the better effect and dramatic impact that they can truly convey. I will reconvene with De Valkyrie sometime soon. The end of this opera in particular is truly heart-rending for me, for as this was discussed before, I know it for my friend Frigg as well. I will consider if ever my money is more lucrative purchasing I know it for Frigg as well. I will consider if ever my money is more lucrative purchasing Mark Janowski's recording based on my trust of her word. Anyway, I agree wholeheartedly with her observation that, at parts, the sound of Karajan's Tristan only solely recording with Johan Vickers and Helga Dranesh gets unbearably loud on otherwise a moderate audio volume. The Vorspiel, during the typically loudest part, with the rise in sound at that very dissonant chord, then the strings fall down successively afterward, is almost unfair to the ear of the listener, that it becomes almost necessary to return to the volume control if a harmonious experience with the recording is to be achieved. I figured that Berlin would be disappointing. It is confirmed to me understandably. I have read and heard about the very typical degeneracy and such that the state of its city has fallen into. I merely mention it as an object of reflection because it does contain its share and build-up of history in the much better past. Munich remains desirable after all, of course by rights, particularly to see the festival house and all the history that developed with Wagner's eminent presence there in the town. June 17, 2012. I began listening to the Valkyrie online earlier today. I found the Solti recording fully uploaded on Neue Illeri Reinklange's channel. He uploads many classical music operas, concertos and such. I believe that nearly every Wagner opera is uploaded by him on his channel currently. This includes all 4 operas of the Ring, so I will try to listen to the rest of this complete drama over time, while reading the German English libretto on a simple site that I've found extraneous to his channel. June 17, 2012. Solti's recording of The Ring is the one that I would rent from the public library in my prior town and listen to it in completion. It is also the one on here that I'm currently listening to. I listened to the first scene of the Valkyrie online earlier today, where Sigmund describes who he is or what his name means to Hendung and Siglindi at their little home campsite. It is very beautiful so far. I believe that Wagner wrote some of his most beautiful music in this particular opera, but notwithstanding the greatness, grandeur, and beauty of his other works, of course, most significantly Lohengrin and Parsifal. For now, I think practicing this routine, listening to The Ring online, together with reading the libretto on the screen from some other sites, works well enough for my will, as otherwise to purchase The Ring can be usually very expensive. I think it is so sad to hear that Germany is the most culturally deluded country in Europa to this day. So much from the glory of Prussia and Bismarck and such. So many aspects of the country's former glory are vanished and disappeared, owing to many common factors. One I'm certain is due to the West's treatment of Germany after the Second World War, the liberal West's influence upon the now puppet-like government of the States. Dramatic fire and Teutonic fury are submerged for the present. Who knows whether such creative qualities will ever see the light of day again, without drowning and annihilating themselves before some wholly new and foreign obscure culture, one that would be very inferior to Germany's past, takes shape and roots itself in the once contentious Germanic soil. June 17, 2012.